ማለት ነው። አክሰፕት ዩ አንቺ እንዲህ ነኝ ካልሽ እንዳለ ነው የምወስዱ ያንን ነገር። ትግራይና አማራዎች ብቻ ናቸው አንቺ ማንነት ሊነግሩሽ የሚነሱ በጣም ጂምናስቲክስ ብትሰሪ እንደዛ ብትገለባበጪ ተሰራው ፖለቲካ ናሽናሊ ባይ ዲዛይን ሌላውን ደግሞ ሰፋሪ እንደመጤ እንደ ሴትለር አድርገው የሴሜቲክ ካቴጎሪ ውስጥ ከተቱ ትክክል አይደለም። አማራው ትግራራው የጉሽ ፋውንዴሽን ነው ያለው። ካሌብ ደግሞ እዚህ መከራከራለሁ ብትለኝ መጽሐፈ አክሱም ላይ የተጻፈ ታሪክ ነው። መጽሐፈ አክሱምን ወይ ትላለህ ወይ ሌላ ነገር ጉሽ አይደለም የምትሆን አንተንም አንዳንድ ሰዎች እውነት ስኮር ይሰጣቸዋል እና የእናንተ ስኮፐር ስለሚሰጣቸው ይታማዋሸታቸው እውነት ናስ ማለት ነው። የኩሽ ስልጣኔ ወይ ደግሞ የኩሽ ህዝብ የኩሽ ታሪክ የኩሽ ነገር የሚባል ነገር ለመስማት ግጅ ነኝ። በሁለቱም በፕራይመሪ ሶርስም ሰከንደሪ ሶርስም የለም ያለው ሱዳን አካባቢ ሞሪ አክሱም ነው የሚባል አታውቅም። እባክሽ ልጨርስና ከዛ በኋላ ትከራከሪያለሽ። እናንተ ከራሳችሁ ታሪክ ጋር የተጣላችሁ ደግሞ የአክሱም ጠበቃ ሆነ ነው የምታወራው። ደፋር ዝም እየሳወራ ነበረ። አሁን አንቺ በሳደብሽ ትርጉም የለውም እኮ እኔ የማወራው እኔ ያወራ ያለሁት በኢትዮጵያ ታሪክ ውስጥ የተጻፈ ነገር ወይ ደግሞ ፕራይመሪ ሶርስ ማለት በአርኪኦሎጂ ሊሆን ይችላል፣ በመሬት ቁፋሮ ወይ ደግሞ በሐውልቶች ላይ ሰናሽሞች ላይ ወይ ድንጋይ ላይ ወይ ብራናዎች ላይ የኩሽ ስልጣኔ ቢል ካለ እኔ ለመማር ዝግጁ ነኝ እያልኩ ነው ያለሁት እኮ ምንም ካልኩ እኔ እስከማውቀው ድረስ ግን በሁለቱም በፕራይመሪ ሰከንደሪ ሶርስ መሰረት በኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ኩሽ የሚባል ነገር ስልጣኔም ሆነ ህዝብ ሆነ
Ini kebisa berjaya. Come on. 对。Jones
ለመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ከዚህ ከሻዕቢያና ከወያኔ ኢህአዴግ የሚባለው በፊት ምንም አይነት ላስ የሚባል ነገር አልነበረም። ከዛ ውስጥም ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥም ነበረ የሚል ካለ ምን ችግር የለውም። በኤቪደንስ የማያምን ሰው ነኝ፣ በውይይት የማያምን ሰው ነኝ፣ ችግር የለውም። ለማለት ጊዜ ማለት የኢዛና እንኳን ጊዜ ስናይ 3 ቋንቋዎች ነበሩ እዛ ጊዜ የሚጠቀማቸው። ኢቭን በድንጋይ ላይ በጽፎ የምናገኛቸው ግሪክ፣ ሳባ እና ግዕዝ ነው። ግዕዝ በዛን ጊዜ ኦሪጂናሊ አሁን የኦሪጂናል የውስጥ የሚለው ነገር የሚጠቀምበት ነው። ግሪክና ሳባ ግን ከባህር ጋር የተያያዘ ብዙ የተለያዩ ከዓለም ከግሪክም ከሳውዲ አረቢያ የተለያዩ አሁን የመን የሚባለው ምርት ስለነበረ ያን ሁለቱም ቋንቋም ኢንክሉድ ሆነዋል በዛ በአክሱም ጊዜ ማለት። ከዛ ውጭ ግን ላቲን የሚባል እዛ ራሱ አናገኝም። ሌላ አሁን ሰሩት በቀደም የወንድ ብልት ነው ቆለጥ ምናምን ስለዚህ ግንባር ላይ ከመስቀል ጋር ይሄ በቃ በጣም ተያያዘ ነው ነበረ። የሚገርም ይሄ ነው ባይ ዘ ወይ አሁን እንደዚህ ስትሉ ያ ፕሪንት አን ኤቪደንስ ካለ እንደዛ የሚል ኤቪደንስ ካለ እኛ ለመማር ግድ እኛ ግን እናውቀው በኤቪደንስ ያለው ቀደም ፍራስ ታቀው የነበረው የማህረም ጋር ካልመቃ ጋር የተያዘ መሆኑ በተለይ ደግሞ ከላይ ያለውን ግማሽ ጨረቃ አለች ከላይ ያወጥ ማለት እና ይሄ የአምላኮች ልዑል አምላክ ወይ ደግሞ ፀሐይና ጨረቃ የፈጠረ የዓለም ብርሃን የፈጠረ እግዚአብሔር የሚባል ልዑል እግዚአብሔር የሚባል እንዳለ የሚያምኑ መሆናቸው የሚያመለክት ምልክት ነው። እሱ ደግሞ በዳማትም ማግኘት ይቻላል። ይህን በዚህ በይሃም እናገኝ ይቻላል። ከዛች የነበረም ፕራክቲካሊ መታ የሚታይ ነገር ነው። የሚጨበጥ የሚታይ ነገር ኤቪደንስ ያለበት ፕራይመሪ ሶርስ ያለበት ነው። አይ ይሄ ወንዱ ብልት ነው ብትል ከሆነ ደግሞ ችግር የለውም። በቃ ከግንባራችሁ ላይ እንደሚደረገው ቅድም ስታነሳ ነበረ ልጅቷ እሱ ከሆነ ደግሞ ማስረጃ ካመጣችሁ መስማት እንችላለን፣ ችግር የለውም ማለት እዛ አክሱም ሐውልት ላይ ግን ኩሽ ይባል አንድ ነገር የለም። በግዕዝ ግን በሺዎች የሚቆጠሩ ኢቨን ከመሬት ስር ራሱ የሚቆፈሩ ገና ያላለቁ ሳይንቲፊካል ራሱ እንዴት እንደተሰሩ የማይታወቁ በርካታ ሚስጥሮች አሉበት አካባቢ ነው ባይዘ ያ አካባቢ። ለዛ ነው እኛ አሁን ሪስፔክት እንዲደረግ ልክ እንደ ቫቲካን ተከልሎ ለብቻውን ራሱ የቻለ እንዲሆን ልክ እንደ ቤካ እንደዛ እንዲሆን የምፈልገው ከታሪካዊ ከመንፈሳዊና ከባህላዊ አንጻር ብዙ ያልታወቁ ሪሰርች ያልተደረገባቸው ነገሮች ስላሉ ነው እዛ ላይ ሌላ ነገር መግባት የለበት ካክ ያለው እንጂ መንፈሳዊ ብቻ አድርገን ከሃይማኖት አንጻር ብቻ አድርገን አይደለም ማለት። ሌላ የየመን ግዛት ስለበቀደም የመን በእርግጥ የእኛ ግዛት ነበር እስከ ቅርብ ጊዜ ድረስ አይሁዶች እና ከርሺያ ገብተው ከዛ ደግሞ አረቦች ገብተው እስከሚያወጡ ድረስ በአክሱም ግዛት ውስጥ ነበረ። ይህን ከዛ ፊትም የኛ ፕራይሞሶስ እንደሚያሳዩት ለምሳሌ ሳይንቲፊክ አርቲክል በ2023 ላይ የታተመ ሪሰርች ማብልሲ አልሻንቻዊ ካላ ሰውና ፕሮፌሰር ካትሪ እንዲያ ትባላለች። በአዲግራትና በዩኒቨርስቲና በካራ ዩኒቨርስቲ መካከል በጋራ ሆኖ ያጠኑትን በሞስ 15 ዓመት የፈጀ ጥናት አለባት። ሳይንቲፊክ አርቲክል ነው። ሰውም ከኤቪደንስ ጋር አርኪኦሎጂካል ፋይንዲንግ ጋር የተያያዘ ነው። ፕራይመሪ ነው። እሱ አሁን ካነበብሽው ምንድን ነው የሚለው ስልጣኔ ከየመን መጣ ከምናምን የሚባል ነገር ትክክል አለ። እንዲያም ኦሪጂናል ስልጣኔው እዛ አሁን ተራ ለመከራ ይባል መለቤት መዘሩ ይባል አካባቢ ከዛ ጀምሮ እየሰፋ ወደ የመን ራሱ የሄደ ነው እንጂ ከየመን መጣ የሚባል ስልጣኔ ውሸት ነው ብላ ነው ሪሰንትሊ አሁን ያለው ፋይንዲንግ እሱ ነው። ያንን ፋይንዲንግ መጥቶ አሁን ያደረገ ማንም አርቲክል የጻፈ አሁን ባለ ሪሰርች ፋይንዲንግ ምንድነው የመን ከኛ የገደ ስልጣኔ እንጂ ከየመን የመጣ ስልጣኔ እንደሌለ ነው እየተናገረ ያለው ማለት። ይሄ ደግሞ ሳይንቲፊካሊ አርቲክል ነው። ብዙ ሳይንቲስቶች ይሁን ያረጉት አርቲክል ነው። አይጋን ሴንድ ሁለት አይነት አርቲክል
طيب
صح؟ فهذا هو اللي حصل. أنا رجعت لنهر النيل. لما كنت في مهمة رسمية في مصر ما كانش في عندي وقت عشان أتعرف على معالم سياحية للبلد. حتى الأهرامات كنت بشوفها من بعيد بس. مصر دي أسطورة، كل حتة فيها تاريخ. كل حاجة درسناها في المدرسة نقدر نشوفها. بحس بالهيبة وأنا واقف عند سفح الأهرامات الخالدة. اللي يعجبني في مصر النهاردة هو الاهتمام بالسياحة. عرفت إن هناك متاحف كتير افتتحت قريب، حاجة على مستوى عالمي. هنا في متحف الحضارات هتشوف تاريخ مصر من مصر الفراعنة حتى اليوم. الشيء الجميل إنه اللي اتبنى في زمان محمد علي لسه موجود لحد دلوقتي. الآثار في كل حتة، جوه المتاحف وبره المتاحف. مصر كلها متحف كبير. أنا كلفوني بمهمة في هيئة العمليات للقيادة العامة. هيئة العمليات في القيادة العامة للجيش هي مسؤولة عن تخطيط الأعمال القتالية. في أثناء التدريبات والمشاريع والمناورات المختلفة كانت عناصر الخطة الكاملة يتم تطبيقها على الأرض، والرئيس السادات كان عنده استراحة في هذه المنطقة، فكان بيجي يتفرج يشاهد هذه التدريبات شخصيا كالقائد العالي للقوات المسلحة. احنا في العناصر الخيرية، وعمري ما كنتش متصور انه ارجع هنا بعد اكتر من 50 سنة في ظروف تختلف تماما عن الظروف اللي كانت ساعتها يعني تقريبا في شهر 9 سنة 1971 كانت في هذه المنطقة تدريبات قوات المهندسين العسكريين المصريين لعبور القنوات، وهي مغطية بمادة محرقة أو حارقة اللي هي نابالم. وبعد التدريبات وصلت القيادة المصرية إلى الاستنتاج أنه لا يمكن عبور القناة ما دام هذه المادة تحرق فوق سطح الماء، ولذلك كلفت السائق قوات خاصة بمهمة قطع أنابيب النابالم التي كانت المفروض توصل المادة دي إلى القناة، ونجحت قوات السائق المصرية في هذه المهمة. القاهرة لها طعم خاص ما تقدرش تلاقيه في أي حتة تانية. أنا فاكر كنا نمشي في الشوارع دي، نفوت للمحلات والمقاهي ودور السينما. اللي حصل إنه في مصر كنا بنتفرج أفلام أجنبي في الغالب، أما الأفلام المصرية شاهدناها في روسيا. كنا بنتعلم اللهجة المصرية وإحنا نشاهد أفلام زي النضارة السوداء، في بيتنا راجل، الصراع في الوادي. والفنانين المصريين كانوا مشهورين عندنا زي عمر الشريف وفاتن حمامة وأحمد رمزي ونادية لطفي. كل الأسامي دي أيام زمان كانت معروفة لدى الشعب الروسي. بداية المهمة في مصر اللي خدت سنتين كان عمري 22 سنة، ووصلنا إلى مطار القاهرة وبعد شوية ركبنا الباص ووصلنا إلى مدينة نصر اللي هي نصر سيتي بعبارة أخرى. هي كانت بيوت متعددة الطوابق ووزعونا على الشقق السكنية. أنا وصلت هنا في 17 أغسطس سنة 1971 مع الخبراء والمستشارين السوفييت اللي كانوا في مهمة حماية سماع مصر من هجمات القوات الجوية الإسرائيلية.
دوبري اوترا.
السلام عليكم. احنا في احضان الحبايب دلوقتي.
حبيبي يا عم الشاب فيكتور، فينك وفين ايامك؟
لسه موجود.
اتفضل حبيبي، اتفضل.
شكرا يا سيدي. احنا شرف لنا نكون في بيت سيادتك، لواء طيار، راجل قتل من اجل استرداد اراضي وطنه، وده شرف كبير لنا بصراحه يا سيدي.
والشرف لينا ايضا.
أنا بحس بنفس الإحساس ما أقدرش أعبر عن شعور، عن إحساسي. يعني بحس إن أنا في بيت أهلي بصراحة.
شكرا ليك أخويا فيكتور، وأنا كان ليا الشرف إن أنا أكون طيار مقاتل، وطرت على كل ما هو له جناح من الطيارات الميج، من أول ميج 15 و17 و19 و21 و23 بكل الأنظمة بتاعتها. وكان ليا الشرف ان انا قاتلت بالطيارة دي ضد السلاح الامريكي واحدث ما في الترسانة الامريكية الطائرات الفانتوم والسكاي هوك. وكان ليا الشرف ان انا اسقط طائرة من الطائرات الفانتوم في اطول معركة جوية كانت موجودة عند العين السخنة بين طائرتين مصريين ميج 21 و6 طائرات فانتوم. اعداد لحرب 73 كان في السبعينات، دي كانت الحرب الحقيقية واللي لولاها ما تم الإعداد بهذه القوة وبهذه الكفاءة والتدريب العالي بمساعدة الخبراء والسلاح الروسي ما تمت 73.
Take a fresh look around at life. Kaleidoscopic, isn't it? A shattered reality distorted by power. Tired vision with no real opinions. Pictures designed to simplify or confuse. Who really wants a better world? And is it just for the chosen few? Fractured images presented as fact.
Can you see through their illusions? Going underground can.
يا ريت سيادتك تدينا تعليق على الصور الجميلة دي.
دي تعتبر أجمل صورة للميج 21 اللي هي حبيبتي من تكون، اللي أنا بروح لها في بانوراما حرب أكتوبر كل 6 أكتوبر وبقول لها بحبك وحشتيني. الطيارة دي عاشت معايا أكتر ما عشت مع مراتي. كنا بنعيش في السماء أكتر ما كنا بنعيش في الأرض، ودي اللي أنا حاربت بيها ودي اللي أنا حققت بيها كل الأمجاد وكل الأشياء الجميلة وحققت نفسي وذاتي فيها. وهي دي كانت سلاحي والسيف اللي أنا كنت ماسكه. الصورة دي تعتبر صورة نادرة للميج 21 لأنها أحسن وأجمل بوز في التصوير، وهي من كتر ما عشنا مع بعض، لأن دي كانت اللي بتنافس مراتي في حبها ليا. فوانا ماشي بتقول لي كده كده يا قلبي يا حته مني هتمشي وتسيبني.
لواءين جوي روسي كانوا، لواء 135 في جاناكليس،
أيوة.
ولواء 35 في كومونوشيم وبني سويف. حوالي 80 طيارة.
أنا اللي استلمت من الناس.
80 طيارة ميج 21 وحاربوا طبعا واستشهدوا.
أيوة.
يوم 30 يوليو، يوم 30 يوليو 3 منهم استشهدوا في اشتباك مع أول اشتباك مع القوات الجوية الإسرائيلية. أنا حتى حافظ أساميهم، هم جورافلوف ويورتشنكو وياكوفلوف، كلهم برتبة نقيب زي سيادتك.
أنا كنت موجود يوميها في الاشتباك ده، كنت موجود يوميها
في بير ريدا
في بير ريدا. وأنا الاشتباك بتاعي كان في بير ريدا برضه،
لأن مركز القيادة كان في بير ريدا.
إحنا متنا سوا. يعني الصاروخ اللي جاي ده مش هيفرق بين الخبير الروسي والضابط المصري ولا بين المسلم ولا بين المسيحي. ده صاروخ جاي بيموت أي واحد.
ما أنا فاهم قصد سيادتك. إحنا كنا في خندق واحد. سيادتك شاهدت ميج 25 اللي كان طائر من كايرو ويست إلى دمشق
غرب القاهرة، كان بتقوم بالإصلاح. دي طيارة كنا مسمينها 3 ماخ 30 كيلو 3 ساعات طيران. ميج 25
فريدة. هم كانوا بيستعملون مادة تيتانيوم في التصنيع. لأن
الطيارة تساوي أكثر من تقلها ذهب. الميج 25
طبعا،
عشان مادة التيتانيوم ديت اللي هي أغلى المواد في العالم.
وأنا شايف حتى في كلام بالروسي جيروي، يعني البطل.
دي الطيارة دي آخر أحدث طيارات ميج وصلت لنا من روسيا. اللي هي موجودة عندنا حاليا، الميج 29 المعدلة، ودي اللي هي موجودة حاليا وفي نفس المكان ونفس المطار اللي أنا حاربت منه، وكان ليا الشرف إن أنا أروح وأشوف الطيارة ديت وأقعد فيها عشان أحيي ذكرياتي.
أنا شايف بين الجوائز في إهداء من مدارس القومية العجوزة. يعني سيادتك على اتصال مباشر مع الجيل
مع
الصاعد.
الجيل الصاعد الجديد، هم دول الأمل. في 60 مليون شاب مصري تحت سن ال 45، فاحنا بنبتدي، ودي ملحوظة يعني قوية جدا من إنسان مخلص زي حضرتك. أنت رفيق سلاحي، فعينك ثاقبة وجات على المواليد الصغيرين اللي هم هيشيلوا البلد اللي هم فيهم الأمل.
Не могли бы вы рассказать об этом здании? Мой интерес совсем не праздный, потому что я здесь был вместе с советскими военными специалистами и советниками в 1971 и 1972 году. И даже был несколько дней в Александрии, но здание такой красоты я не представлял.
Ну, вы теоретически могли бы здесь оказаться в данное время, потому что это здание советские власти как бы выкупили его в 1961 году. Это достаточно знаменитая здесь в Александрии вилла, она историческая. Ранее она принадлежала Константину Сальваго. Была построена в 1915 году. Здесь все убранство центра, оно все сохранено, старается сохраняться по сей день в первозданном виде. Например, вот этот замечательный витраж, который был создан французским художником специально для этого центра. И по сей день он нас радует. Все, что здесь вы видите, сделано из... все эти деревянные детали, очень красиво вырезаны, они сделаны из ценных пород кедра и сохраняются в таком первозданном виде. Мы стараемся поддержать всю эту красоту и убранство для будущих поколений. В нашем центре в основном проводятся различные культурные мероприятия. Также здесь существуют курсы русского языка для египтян, курсы школы балета, школы гимнастики российской, которые славятся по всему миру. И также различные курсы здесь проводятся музыкальные, школа фортепиано, школа гитары и так далее. На базе нашего русского центра уже давно существует клуб соотечественников «Александрия», в котором всегда он собирается, и старшее поколение, и молодое поколение, и все наши дети туда приходили и приходят.
Есть ли интерес у египтян изучать русский язык, русскую культуру?
Да, всегда есть спрос, к нам постоянно приходят, учатся, часто посещают после этого Россию, часто именно с этой целью приезжают сюда и учат наш русский язык.
Я уже нормально говорю по-русски.
Говорю по-русски. Да.
Я уже говорю.
Уже нормально?
Уже нормально
Говорю по-русски.
Я вот приехал в Александрию подучить, так скажем, арабский язык, и вот начал изучать арабский диалект.
Для того, чтобы двигаться вперед, конечно, нужно обращаться к опыту тех, кто прошел по этому пути раньше.
سعيد جدا بالمحادثه دي ونفسي اوصل لليفل ان انا اعرف اتكلم زيكم بجد في اللغه الروسيه دي.
في اللغه الروسيه مش مشكله، المهم الجهد يعني.
ما انا بحاول بقالي 4 سنين بحاول ادرس اللغه، ومع ذلك لسه مش حاسس ان انا اقدر اتكلم قوي زي حضراتكم الصراحه.
انا بقالي اكتر من 50 سنه بدرس عربي، مش ممكن اقول ان انا اجيد اللغه العربيه، لا.
بس تقريبا
نفس الشيء بالنسبه للروسيه، يعني هتوصل الى مستوى معين وتلاقي مثلا مره تفتح الراديو وتفهم انك انت تستعيد كل شيء، يعني كلمه كلمه.
ده صعب.
ده هيحصل حتما. المهم الواحد يستمر. ما يتوقفش، مش خايف من اي فشل.
لازم
هو ده الشرط الاساسي.
تمام.
وتنوع المواضيع زي ما قلت، تنوع المواضيع بالنسبه للقرايه، وتنوع المواضيع بالنسبه لمشاهده افلام روسيه.
طب هل اللغه الروسيه مختلفه في اللهجات والطرق زي العربي مثلا؟
لا ابدا خالص. لا، هي عندنا ممكن نقول ان اللغه الروسيه هي لغه فصحى.
الفصحى
يعني في لهجات محليه، بس هي
مش منتشره،
ما لهاش دور زي
بس
مثلا
مفيش تنوع قوي زي العربي. مثلا العربي مصر
لا
مكان تاني.
عكس السيتويشن اللي عندكم، يعني ده يسهل لك الطريق كتير.
فرصة سعيدة أنا أكون في الإسكندرية بمدة شهر، وأنا عايز أتعرف معك، وإذا أنت عايز أنا أدرس اللغة الروسية أدرس لديك اللغة العربية. أيوة،
ده يكون شيء عظيم جدا ويكون شرف ليا بجد.
أحب أتمنى النجاح لكل واحد في تعليم لغته الخاصة، اللغة الخاصة به، وأعتبر أن دي فرصة سعيدة جدا بالنسبة لكل الاثنين. أشكرك يا سيدي. تفضل.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. احنا فهمنا انه ما اخذ بالقوة لازم يتم استرداده بالقوة. هذا كان شعار الشعب المصري ساعتها، واحنا كنا بنأيد هذا الشعار، لأنه فكرة الاحتلال هي اللي بتثير كراهية عند الشعب الروسي. فاحنا كنا بنشعر انه قضية الشعب المصري والشعب العربي هي قضية عادلة، واحنا كعسكر نؤيد الشعب اللي يريد يرجع حقه في الأرض وحقه في السيادة.
Buchanka. I'm nearly 70. I'm one of the few vehicles in the world, if not the only one, still produced with almost no modification to my original design. I may be old, but I don't age. I still work hard and fight. Let me tell you my story. Well, in truth, it isn't just mine.
Iran vows retaliation after the U.S. Navy breached the ceasefire by seizing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman.
We have no plans for the next round of negotiations, and no decision has been made in this regard.
Iran says reports of a second round of negotiations with the U.S. are not accurate. Earlier, Donald Trump announced new talks, insisting the U.S. will step up bombing of civilian infrastructure unless Tehran signs a deal. Also ahead, former President Rumen Radev is ready to promote Bulgaria's national interests as his coalition wins the country's parliamentary election. With mainstream media quick to brand the victors pro-Russian, the public expects him to put Bulgaria first.
At most, he might stop us from giving anything to Ukraine.
Bulgaria should pursue its own interests first, and only then defend Euro-Atlantic values or any others.
A warm welcome. This is RT International with the World News Update. It's good to have you with us this hour. Well, our top story, as tensions around the Strait of Hormuz intensify, the U.S. military has released footage of its attack on an Iranian commercial ship in the Gulf of Oman. Donald Trump earlier said his forces had boarded and seized the vessel that tried to bypass the U.S. naval blockade. According to Iranian military officials cited by state media, retaliation is imminent. America has violated the ceasefire and committed an act of piracy.
Aggressive America violated the ceasefire and committed maritime piracy by firing at one of Iran's commercial ships in the waters of the Sea of Oman and disabling its navigation system by deploying a number of its terrorist Marines on the deck of the mentioned vessel, thereby assaulting it. We warn that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will soon respond to and retaliate against this maritime robbery and armed act by the U.S. military.
Well, all of this is happening as Donald Trump insists that there will be another round of negotiations in Islamabad. In fact, he stated that the U.S. delegation will be heading to Pakistan on Monday. The president also indicated who would be part of the negotiations from the U.S. side, and media reports say that that would be, of course, the usual names, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. But here's where it gets a little bit more complicated, because while the U.S. is with stern confidence is stating that there will be negotiations, Iran, on the other hand, has denied that development and even underscored that the unrealistic demands and contradictions that are coming from the United States are the reason the negotiations are stalling.
We have no plans for the next round of negotiations, and no decision has been made in this regard. While claiming diplomacy and readiness to negotiate, the United States is engaging in behaviors that in no way indicate seriousness in pursuing a diplomatic process. There is no trust between Iran and the U.S. due to the long-term and continuous misconduct they have committed. We make decisions based on our interests and benefits. Regarding any possible understanding or agreement, we must act in a way that our leverage and capabilities guarantee the implementation of that understanding.
Now, Iran's skepticism and outright refusal is not a surprise at all, especially because all of this started due to Washington's actions. First of all, from Iran's perspective, there are concerns that the deal would essentially go nowhere, that these negotiations would go for months and months and months, all while the demands from the Iranian side are being undermined. And second of all, and most importantly here, is that for Iran, this latest round of attacks is almost like a deja vu, because let's remember that this round of attacks happened in the middle of negotiations that were being mediated by Oman, and Oman itself stated that the negotiations were going well, and then suddenly Iran finds itself in attacks coming from the U.S. and Israel. Let's also not forget that Tehran remembers the last negotiations that happened in June of 2025, and even then they found themselves being attacked by Washington in the middle of talks. So in both instances, negotiations are almost used as a pretext, as a way for Iran to put its guard down. And again, while Donald Trump talks about the U.S. offering a deal to Iran, at the same time, he is threatening the country with violence.
We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They'll come down fast, they'll come down easy, and if they don't take the deal, it will be my honor to do what has to be done, which should have been done to Iran by other presidents for the last 47 years. It's time for the Iran killing machine to end.
I mean, the situation is absolutely absurd. While talking peace, the U.S. president is also threatening with brutality and flaunting power. But while the U.S. chooses that kind of tone in its approach to Tehran, it seems that for Iran anyway, it is not going to be bending the knee to anything less than what it demands.
So, Uma, what are the main points of disagreement between Washington and Tehran when it comes to negotiations?
Well, of course, the centerpiece of it all is Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. wants Iran to dismantle that whole program altogether. Of course, Tehran says that any restrictions should come within a limited number of years. The uranium stockpile issue, the U.S. wants to take Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Tehran rejects that demand. Tehran is also demanding compensation for damages that were caused by the U.S.-Israeli attacks. And those damages would essentially amount to $270 billion. Sanctions relief is another point on freezing of assets worth $20 billion should be part of any deal, according to Iran. And of course, another pressing issue is the vital Strait of Hormuz here. Tehran insists that it will maintain restrictions on the waterway until the U.S. lifts its blockade on Iranian ports. Now, to that, Donald Trump says that the blockade will remain unless a deal is reached. But let's listen in to Iran's point regarding the strait.
The Strait of Hormuz is under the control of the Islamic Republic. We want the people of the world to use it. But those who act as enemies in this war and behave with hostility toward us should not be able to pass through here easily. We do not want to put pressure on people or create insecurity. We never sought that.
So that is where the situation essentially stands for now. It seems that both sides disagree. And at the end of the day, this clash comes down to the lack of trust between the two parties, especially as the U.S. has had a questionable pattern on how it approaches diplomacy with Iran.
Let's cross live to Professor at the University of Tehran, Saeed Mohammed Marandi. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see you today. So it feels like we're kind of just waiting now. It's been almost 24 hours since the U.S. seized an Iranian commercial ship. Tehran has vowed a response. What might that look like, and when do you think it might be?
It will definitely be a military response, but we have to wait and see what the Iranians choose to do. But I think after this 40-day war, the Ramadan war, the United States has finally come to understand that Iran is a power and that the United States has been defeated by Iran, despite the fact that the United States waged war against Iran with a coalition, with the Israeli regime that has all the weapons that the West can offer, and of course its proxies in the Persian Gulf, which gave the United States everything that they needed to slaughter and murder Iranians. But despite that, after 40 days, it was the United States that sought a ceasefire. It was the United States that accepted the Iranian 10-point plan as the point of reference during negotiations. At the beginning, we all recall that Trump demanded unconditional surrender, and after 40 days, he was forced to accept the Iranian 10-point plan, even though he did not abide by it at all. Excuse me, even though he did not abide by it at all, because he's dishonest, and the Trump regime is dishonest. And that is the problem, or one of the key problems at least, with negotiating with the United States. The regime is dishonest, and it will not abide even by its own commitments.
So where does that leave any potential for future dialogue, listing all the things that you've just gone through and the dishonesty which you described from the US president? How can we move forward with a diplomatic solution?
That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer to that. And that is why the Iranians are preparing themselves for war, because it seems that the United States is increasingly, as it declines, it is increasingly behaving like a 19th century and 18th century imperial power. Crude, barbaric, speaking about how it will wipe out a nation, how it will obliterate a nation, how it will take a nation, a people back to the Stone Age. And if you've noticed, no one in the Western media, none of the major journalists or the media outlets, whether British or American or French, none of them are outraged by these threats to carry out the greatest Holocaust by far in human history. That is because the entire Western political class, which includes the media, is utterly bankrupt. It's corrupt. It's the Epstein class that owns this, and the Epstein class has no moral values. It has no sense of morality. So it is going to be very difficult. As the Iranians have said, the Iranians will have to use their leverage. They will have to use their power to ensure that the United States abides by its commitments. And there's no other way, because whenever we showed goodwill, the Americans basically went and did the opposite. They went and increased pressure. They saw this as a sign of weakness, misinterpreting Iran's intentions, because we are so different. The Iranians are decent, they're civilized, they have values, that's why they're opposed to genocide, and the Americans, their elites, have no values. So when the Iranians show goodwill, they interpret this as weakness and they become more aggressive and more barbaric and more brutal. So during the 40-day war, the Iranians showed that they can hammer the Americans, they can hammer their interests for 40 days and 40 nights, and there's nothing that the Americans can do about it. But still, the United States hasn't learned its lesson. That's the problem. So we may have to have another war. The Americans may carry out another barbaric aggression, but they will still lose.
I think it's become very obvious to many that Washington has underestimated Iran. But because the US, of course, is so used to countries bowing to its pressure, this is something quite out of the ordinary. So what makes Iran so different that it's not willing to bow down to Washington's pressure?
It's not just Iran, it's Iran and the entire axis of resistance. It's Hezbollah, it's Yemen, Ansarullah, it's the resistance in Iraq, it's the resistance in Palestine. This culture of resistance is, I think, something unique. And I think many people from across the global South are beginning to show a great deal of interest in it. My friends in Brazil have been telling me that many anti-imperialist leaders are looking into Iranian political culture and into why it is that Hezbollah has been so steadfast. Why is it that Iran has been so steadfast? Why is it that these entities, Yemen, the Iraqis, all are willing to make sacrifices? Stop the genocide in Gaza. This is, I think, something quite extraordinary, that not only is Iran resilient against U.S. aggression, but Iran is also, and its allies, adamant that the West be prevented from destroying the Palestinian people.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today. I appreciate your time. Professor at the University of Tehran, Saeed Mohammed Marandi, thank you.
Thank you.
9 survivors from an Iranian Navy ship that was sunk by a U.S. submarine last month have finally returned home. Emotional scenes as the sailors were greeted by family members and loved ones. They were among 32 people rescued by Sri Lanka after the Iranian frigate sank near the island. The survivors were granted shelter there for 30 days before being sent back home, along with more than 200 other Iranian crew members from another vessel. The Iranian military says 124 of the 180 people aboard the Iris Dana died after it was torpedoed by a U.S. submarine. The frigate was struck in neutral waters while heading back to Iran from an international drill hosted by India. Tehran claimed its ship was unarmed and posed no threat at the time. One of the survivors says they were attacked without warning.
It was around 3 to 3:30 a.m. when we were suddenly attacked an attack that was completely against international maritime laws. It was not a war zone, and we had received no warning. When the first torpedo hit, all personnel were at their posts, and no one left the ship. Everyone stood their ground until the end.
The Israeli Defense Forces have launched a new wave of strikes at Lebanon, violating the current ceasefire. Footage published by the IDF documents the overnight assault on southern Lebanon. Israel claims to have targeted and struck a loaded and ready-to-fire missile launcher. This comes as Hezbollah accuses Israel of multiple truce violations over the past 3 days. West Jerusalem says it will continue to act in self-defense. With a ceasefire still in place, Israeli forces confirmed carrying out operations in southern Lebanon, allegedly to counter direct threats to Israeli communities. 5 IDF divisions alongside Israeli Navy forces reportedly remain active south of the so-called forward defense line in Lebanon. We spoke with the Palestinian ambassador to India, who suggests Israel's understanding of the truce is entirely one-sided.
Israel is not violating the ceasefire only in Lebanon. Israel was agreed on the ceasefire on Gaza last October, and since the very first time, since the very first moment that they signed the agreement, they did not stop violating the ceasefire or what so-called the ceasefire. Since that time, Israel killed more than 1,000 plus Palestinians in Gaza, again, since they signed the agreement to answer or since they agree on the ceasefire. So that this is a normal issue. Israel, from the Israeli side, side ceasefire mean you cease and they will continue to fire. This is the same exact issue that happened right a long time ago in Gaza and happened unfortunately in Lebanon. Regarding the situation in West Asia, unfortunately the situation is deteriorated. Of course, with the ceasefire that had been declared between U.S., Israel from one side and Iran from the other side. We are so happy to that because peace is a very important issue, and we look forward for this ceasefire to become end of the war, not only a ceasefire.
The scale of destruction in southern Lebanon is evident. Drone footage circulating on the internet shows homes almost completely destroyed after massive Israeli attacks. Despite this, locals are coming back to the area with a sense of victory. RT journalist Ali Reader has more from Nabatea city.
We're now in the center of Nabatea city. As you can see behind me, life is slowly coming back to the city. It's not very crowded. Usually these streets are very crowded, especially on a Sunday. But since not everyone came back to the city after the announcement by Hezbollah and the spokesman of the parliament, Namih Berri, and even the Lebanese army, everyone told the people to refrain from coming back to the villages. But even with that, southern Lebanese villagers came back to their villages, and especially here in Nabatieh, we've even seen shops opening, restaurants, and especially the coffee shops are opening.
The situation is tragic and a massacre may occur because, unfortunately, Israel does not spare anyone. The South is our land and we love it. I reopened my cafe because we know that we are the winners and the right belongs to us. Israel exaggerates the situation in its statements, and some people inside Lebanon say they need to leave. On the contrary, the right belongs to us and we must stay in our cities. We must win and be glad that we have returned, and God willing, everyone who has their own business or shop in the city of Nabatieh will return and resume their activities. For example, I opened my cafe a couple of days ago without any high expectations. I don't even have a bank account open, and I have enough goods for 10 days. As soon as these 10 days pass, then we will decide what to do.
There's a scale of destruction also in the city. This city was facing a heavy bombardment by the Israeli army. Even the government palace behind us was also targeted by an Israeli strike, leaving 12 deaths from the internal security personnel. This city came under attack until the last moments of the ceasefire. Now people are still gradually coming back because they still don't know if this ceasefire gonna stand until the last day or the war is coming back again. So this ceasefire is at some point, it's very fragile because at some point Hezbollah might fight back. And it was also mentioned by Mahmoud Khomati, a Hezbollah official. He told people that not to abandon their places and of displacement. And he also mentioned that hands of the Hezbollah fighters are still on the triggers and waiting for the to fight back any Israeli attacks. So these days are very critical for the ceasefire, and also people are waiting for negotiations between the United States and Iran to see what is gonna happen. And you can hear now these songs that are played in the city because people coming back very happily, feeling the victory in these villages, because they came back after this aggressive war on their villages. They came back, as they say, by the will of the resistance, by the power of the resistance. And they don't acknowledge, I haven't seen anyone acknowledge that this ceasefire is the work of the government. They all say that it's the work of the resistance.
With Israel showing no sign of dialing back aggression in the Middle East, anxiety is now spreading to the Mediterranean. Turkey's top diplomat has voiced concerns that West Jerusalem could soon set its sights on countries surrounding the greatest sea of antiquity.
The problem of Israel's expansionism is now not only a security issue for the region, but for the whole world. Israel, Greece, and the Greek Cypriot administration, I'm telling you this just in case you were wondering, have come together to form a military alliance and establish concrete military units. In other words, their threat priority is clear. So no one can expect this will create any other kind of impression, especially not for Turkey and other countries involved.
The Turkish foreign minister has repeatedly criticized the alliance shared by West Jerusalem, Athens and Nicosia, claiming it could trigger a war. Established in the early 2010s, the pact centers on security and defense collaboration through intelligence sharing and joint military exercises. During the group's latest trilateral summit, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu offered this cryptic warning, which many believe was directed at Turkey.
To those who fantasize they can reestablish their empires and their dominion over our lands, I say, forget it. It's not going to happen. Don't even think about it.
An assistant professor of international relations at Turkey's Kanakali Sekit Mart University says Israel's very existence relies on conflict.
It is fundamentalist policies which is dragging entire region into war with each other. So since the recent developments around the world tend to change a lot of things, including the hegemony wars. So everybody sees it as an opportunity. So Israel wants to survive, and it needs a war to survive, and that's why Netanyahu wants to wage another war. On the other hand, considering what happened between United States and European countries, NATO allies in the past few months, they don't want to have worse relations with Turkey. I mean, particularly European nations. So it gives Greece and Southern Cypriots no chance to deal with Turkey, at least in the short term. And that's why they want to take advantage of the situation while collaborating with Israel. So it works in favor of their own political benefits, internal political benefits, but in terms of foreign policy, it's kind of a suicide.
Now to Bulgaria, where former President Rumen Radev's progressive coalition has won the parliamentary vote. Speaking shortly after the polls closed, the leader of the victorious bloc promised to approach the EU as well as Russia with more pragmatism.
Bulgaria will pay efforts to continue its European path, but believe me, strong Bulgaria in strong Europe needs critical thinking, needs pragmatism, because Europe has fallen a victim to its own ambition to be a moral leader in a world without rules.
You said that dialogue with Russia needs to be resumed.
Ask President Macron, ask the Prime Minister of Belgium, ask other European leaders who stated already a month ago that this dialogue needs to return. We need to work towards it, not only because of the new security architecture in Europe, which is inevitable. Europe needs to think very seriously in this increasingly escalating crisis, especially to our south, because without energy resources, we cannot talk about competitiveness. So I expect Europe to be much more pragmatic in its thinking and actions.
This marks a historical moment for Bulgaria for a number of reasons. Now, as it stands, Rumen Radev is essentially going to gain 131 seats in parliament. This means he can actually form a majority government. Although he does have 131 seats, what this also means that he is about 29 seats shy of being able to move forward with judicial and constitutional reforms, which, well, the people have been specifically asking for, reforming the judicial system to crack down on corruption and what many people refer to as mafia-like structures within the political structure in Bulgaria. As it stands, the people of Bulgaria have spoken out, but we've spoken to some of these people, and they highlight what they really expect from this government. Let's lend our ears for a brief moment.
I think Rumen Radev is smart and stable. At most, he might stop us from giving anything to Ukraine from poor Bulgaria, from the poor people of Bulgaria who don't have enough for themselves, for their own needs, for the beggars who dig through the trash looking for something to eat.
A lot of people, they start looking for more European things in Bulgaria to be changed like that. So I think definitely we'll keep this way.
And the question is whether the direction taken so far is actually the right one, because as we can see, the Euro-Atlantic direction, has it really brought us many benefits so far? I believe Bulgaria should pursue its own interests first, and only then defend Euro-Atlantic values or any others. We have clearly not been defending our own interests so far.
I think getting into the Europe and the Euro, it's one of the worst decisions you guys made. Every country that went into Euro had problems after that.
The locals suggest that this is a monumental opportunity because leading into the elections, polls suggested that the two frontrunners, Rumen Radev and Boyko Borisov, were essentially neck and neck, 30 to 20 points, but now the gap sits at around 30 points. So that is one aspect. Another aspect is just the turnout of these elections. The elections in 2024 resulted in 33 to 38% or so of the vote. And now we're looking at a surplus of 50%. So it shows that people took these elections to heart, despite the speculation of political exhaustion or fatigue. The people are making their voices heard, but there are also others across the spectrum that are making their opinions heard. And looking at the mainstream media, for example, ranging from the Washington Post, the Telegraph, CNN, Deutsche Welle, they refer to the victor of these elections as pro-Putin, pro-Russia, pro-Russian, Russia-friendly or Kremlin-friendly. And these statements are concerning for a number of reasons. But looking at the statements coming from Radev after these elections, or since the exit polls, and even just after he cast his ballot earlier on Sunday, he is trying to approach these tough times with a pragmatic approach. And that pragmatism was actually reflected by a statement from the Kremlin. Let's listen to the spokesperson right now.
It would be premature to draw sweeping conclusions about a change in the overall European political climate. We are, however, seeing statements coming from Brussels of a completely different nature. But we are certainly impressed by the words of Mr. Radev, who won the election, and several other European leaders about their willingness to resolve problems through dialogue, pragmatic dialogue, with the Russian Federation. We are impressed by this. We welcome it. We also believe that any existing contradictions, any discrepancies in mutual interests, can and should be resolved only at the negotiating table. Russia has never rejected dialogue. On the contrary, we seek dialogue. But more often than not, this is not reciprocated in Europe.
The pragmatism on display by Radev does not come cheap. Many people refer to him as Eurosceptic, and although that may be true because he opposes much of Brussels' foreign policies, that does not mean that he's in a position where he may not work with Brussels. Radev is a political figure. He served as the president of Bulgaria before he resigned earlier this year to run in these elections. He was also a NATO general. He was the chief of the Air Force of Bulgaria, and he represented the country on the NATO level. So there are people across the political spectrum, as well as the voter base, that just do not buy into these allegations. And the fact that he's been able to succeed in forming a majority government may just bring about the change that Bulgarians have been looking for so long, considering that the elections on Sunday did, of course, pose the 8th parliamentary election in 5 years. The people of Bulgaria may just well have what they need.
Always good to have you with us here on RT. For more of the latest updates, do keep an eye on our website, rt.com. We'll be back with more in 30 minutes. See you then.
Что думают о русских солдатах немцы, пережившие Вторую мировую войну? Немецкая редакция RT предложила своим читателям-немцам поделиться личными воспоминаниями о послевоенном времени. Мы получили невероятное количество писем с семейными историями. Людям было важно поделиться, а у нас появилась уникальная возможность рассказать, как все было на самом деле. Например, пришло письмо, в котором рассказывается, как русский военнопленный, который шел в колонне, отдал свой орден в знак благодарности за кусок хлеба немецкому мальчику. И мы запросили архивы Министерства обороны помочь нам в поисках владельца этого ордена. Мы отобрали лишь несколько историй для нашего фильма.
Добрый день. Hier ruhen Tausende, oder ich weiß gar nicht, wie viel hier ruhen, aber es ist eine Menge. Ja, die Leute, die so Gefallenen hier, die waren ja so im besten Alter häufig. So 20, 30. Советского Союза. Лейтенант Яснов E.M.
Wie war Ihre erste Begegnung mit den sowjetischen Soldaten?
Solche Uniform noch nie gesehen. Wir kannten eine Polizeiuniform, eine deutsche. Aber eine solche Uniform noch nicht, so in Khaki-Farben. Mit diesen Schiffchen obendrauf und den roten Sternen und so. Angst hatten wir keine. In der Nähe, unweit von unserer Wohnung, wir wohnten im Zentrum, unweit des Rathauses in Frankfurt oder, auf sowjetische Soldaten gestoßen, die dort eine Ruine eingerissen haben mit Kettenfahrzeugen. Das hatten wir noch nie gesehen. Auch diese Uniform, völlig neu, unbekannt. Und es hatte sich immer ergeben, dass wir von sowjetischen Soldaten dort, das waren 3, 4 Leute immer ungefähr, eingeladen worden waren. Wir konnten uns nicht verständigen in dem Sinn, aber sie hatten uns eingeladen zu Suppe und Brot. Und da braucht man keine Worte. Das hat auch sehr gut geschmeckt, muss ich dazu sagen. Das hatte sich auch so bei mir eingebrannt ins Gedächtnis. Ein solches Brot hatte ich nie wieder essen können. Das war toll. Sie sind uns gegenüber ja völlig normal gegenübergetreten, indem sie uns eingeladen haben. Und gefragt haben, Mama, Papa, yes. Und was waren so die ersten Vokabeln auf Russisch, die ich wahrgenommen? Durch diese einfache Verständigung und Fragen und durch das Essen, da waren alle, gab es keine Ressentiments oder da waren wir, ja, gut aufgehoben. Eine gepflegte Anlage. So sollte es auch sein. Einige Mitbewohner trifft oder Landsleute. Eine sehr schöne Sache war auch, wie mich ein sowjetischer Soldat mal mit nach oben auf ein Dach mitgenommen hat. Das war kein Steildach, ein flaches, so dass es begehbar war. Und wir wühlten uns da so durch Steinhaufen und dann kamen wir auch an diese Treppenflur und ich weiß jetzt nicht welche Etage, aber irgendwo hatte der Treppenabsatz gefehlt. Da war ein Loch nach unten. War für mich natürlich ein bisschen, naja, wie sagt man, nicht